Well, thank you, Terry, and thank you, Christine. And I'd like to take this opportunity just to tell you that Christine just won the Athena Award. Are you still there, Christine? This is for women's leadership in Nashville. So congratulations. I'm sure coming and doing these events was a major part of that award. I'm just joking. Now, welcome again on this incredible day. It's always sort of weird when you have a beautiful day outside to come inside, but fortunately we've going to have a beautiful inside as well. After an earlier career as a journalist and a writer, Barbara Hahn joined us at Vanderbilt from Princeton in 2004 as a distinguished professor of German, and she's now chair of our German department. She's a gifted teacher and a prolific writer and editor. She got her doctorate from the Free University of Berlin, and I think she every so often goes back there and gives them a course or a seminar. The main focus of her scholarly interest lies in Jewish intellectual women of the 19th century and the ways in which they found a voice for themselves in a largely male and Christian culture that didn't really encourage them to think or write or teach. In particular, Professor Hahn's become interested in those long-term conversations that take the form of exchanged letters. These often intimate documents were commonly destroyed after their author's death, making the literary historian's job especially frustrating. But this month, Barbara Hahn is rightfully celebrating the results of, is it really 25 years of work on Rachel Levine Varnhagen with her 6-volume edition of her letters hot off the press. I know we'll all be out there buying them. This will, I think, put Varnhagen firmly on the map and do something to correct the neglect of history. Professor Hahn's the author and editor of numerous books on Hannah Arendt, on modernity, on women's authorship, on Walter Benjamin, on Pauline Wiesel's, on Margareta Sussman, and on Nietzsche, Goethe, and Kafka. This year, she's teaching courses on love and friendship, on autobiography, on the idea of a university, and I think on dreams. Now, I don't know whether all these are destined to become books, but I know she's writing books on writing and walking, on poetry and thinking in Hannah Arendt, and on the subject of today's presentation, dreams in the 20th century. To all this, I must add that while Barbara may not aspire to recreate in Nashville the Berlin salons associated with some of the women that she works on, through her dinner parties and all-round personal generosity, she has become a remarkable center of gravity for the friendship and conversation among colleagues that is, I think, for her, the heart of the intellectual life. Please welcome Barbara Hahn.
Thank you, David, for this kind introduction. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm afraid I'm going to disappoint you. I will talk about dreams in the 20th century. I will concentrate on Europe. And as you might imagine, these dreams are not nice. People had to go through really bad times, and what they wrote down in their dreams, it's not a dream house and it's not a dream marriage, it's more on the side of a nightmare. When Sigmund Freud published his treatise, The Interpretation of Dreams, in 1899, he decided to post-date the book. His seminal study claimed to start its journey through the world in the year 1900, the dawn of the 20th century. The book was supposed to stand at the threshold of a new time. Looking back from our position at the start of the 21st century, the 20th century has proven to be a century of dreams. but not in the way Sigmund Freud had imagined. For Freud, dreams were the royal road, so he called it, to the mysteries of the unconscious. But they needed an interpretation. Countless patients suffering from all kinds of mental diseases were able to overcome their fears and phobias, their anxieties and neurotic tics. They all underwent what Freud called the talking cure. They recounted their dreams, and Freud tried to make sense of them. Without knowing who had dreamed them and under what circumstances, Freud claimed dreams remain absolutely meaningless. Throughout the 20th century, people wrote down their dreams, and if we consider the dreams that have come down to us from the last century, we notice that the vast majority of the dreams lack an interpretation. Their authors obviously saw no need to provide us with any extra information. But why did they do that? And what can we learn from dreams written down by people we don't even know and in whose psyche we are not at all interested? As it turns out, dreams prove to be archives of the most frightening experiences people underwent during the past century. In retrospect, it seems as if the history of this extremely violent century might well be written as the story of people not dreaming of their own individual difficulties, but rather dreaming as a collective of all the unsolved problems of their time. Or, to put it even more strongly, writing down dreams was one of the very few possibilities of fathoming and withstanding the unprecedented. I would like to invite you to accompany me on a journey through a few of the many dreams that are recorded in European memoirs and diaries, in books and notes, written in Italian and in German, in Russian and in French. Let us start with a dream written in German by a young man in July of 1919, a couple of months after the end of World War I. He gave his dream a strange title. It's called The Soviet Cloud. This was just 2 years after the foundation of the Soviet Union. In the middle of this rather powerful piece, we see the dreamer walking the streets of Berlin in Germany. And now I quote the dream. In the window of a store, I see the most delicious goods and fruits. This was still the time of hunger in Europe. Eel, salmon, large walnuts, lobster, grapes, bananas, geese and turkeys, pâtés and sausages, whatever one might be able to imagine. I'm staying there for a long while, enjoying with my eyes. Especially the summit of a mountain built of coconuts and pineapples draw my attention. On top of it, a dish garnished with lemon and dark green parsley, a larded saddle. It's not a roast of hare or rabbit. It is a child without skin, easily to be recognized because of its skull covered with dark hair. Laid on its belly, the little legs straddled and amputated at the knee for better display. Red, larded flesh, appetizing. Who in former times would have thought that something like this is possible, I thought. And today, no one even takes notice. The dream registers a historical rupture. In former times, people would have thought impossible what now turns out to be possible. So real that no one even pays attention. People stay cold, as the text says. It takes the dreamer a while before he notices that something has changed. The moment of recognition does not jump out of a passage in which all the verbs emphasize slow movement. The dreamer strolls the streets of Berlin. He takes his time and studies all the goods on display in the window, even though a ravenous appetite drives him. The window centerpiece, arranged on the top of a mountain built of fruits, does not initially draw his attention. We rather follow a wandering gaze. They are fruits, but what do they look like? If we were to build a mountain of coconuts and pineapples, we would probably not cut them up. Instead of the shiny white and the glossy yellow of these tropical fruits, they would only be a rather blunt brown. And then, at the very end, an image appears, as clear as a still life. A dish carrying roasted meat that is neither hare, nor rabbit, nor pork, nor anything else that human beings typically would eat. It is a human corpse, as the verb in the sentence clearly points out. We cut the animal carcass at the joint. We do not amputate it at the knee. And with the corpse on a dish, colors appear. Yellow lemon, dark green parsley, red flesh. A still life, what the French call a nature morte, a recognizable image. But the very moment at which something familiar is recognized is also the moment in which the dreamer realizes that the familiar is nothing but the empty shell of something absolutely new. In a book published in 1938, 20 years later that is, we find a dream that echoes the one I just quoted. This dream is entitled Purple Endives, and it reads, I entered a luxuriant grocery store because in the window I had noticed a very special purple sort of endives. I was not taken by surprise when the sales clerk explained to me that there's only one dish that would go well with this vegetable, human flesh. I had a foreboding of this answer. We engaged in a long conversation on how to prepare this dish, and then we went down to the cold storage room where I saw the humans hanging on the walls like rabbits hang outside the venison store. The sales clerk pointed out that what I would see here were only hunted pieces and not those fattened by the dozen on a farm. They are leaner. I don't say that in order to advertise them, but they taste much better. The heads, hands, and feet were displayed on special dishes provided with price tags. When we walked upstairs, I said to him, I had not realized that in this town civilization had made so much progress. The sales clerk hesitated for a moment, but then he answered with a very obliging smile. A remarkable dream, a prophetic dream, we might say. The image of people hanged on hooks like sections of butchered animals is an uncanny anticipation of one of the Nazis' preferred execution methods. Those held responsible for trying to assassinate Hitler on July 20, 1944, were hanged by piano wire from such hooks. What the dreamer encounters in this frightening dream is not a revival of cannibalism, for cannibalism was always already considered a remnant of former uncivilized times in human history. In the world that the dreamer is about to enter, humans hunt other humans like game. They breed them on farms like cattle. Again, a prophetic dream. It would not take long until cattle trains transported people to camps. The German word for farm used in the dream could also be used for a camp. The dream ends with a consent. No room for disgust or revulsion, no room for disagreement. Consent, much like in the first dream where people stay cold and do not even notice that something has happened, that they're encountering dramatic historical changes. This dream was written and, astonishing enough, published in a Germany under the Nazi dictatorship. In a totalitarian state, dreams gain new importance. Charlotte Behrath, a young journalist in Berlin when the Nazis destroyed the last remainders of democracy in Germany, seems to have noticed this change immediately. Her book, The Third Reich of Dreams, published in 1965, opens a new chapter in the history of dreams. It is composed of carefully arranged dreams the author collected between 1933, when Hitler came to power, and 1939, when she fled to England. As she writes in her introduction to the book, She had asked all her friends and acquaintances to tell her their dreams. The book opens with the motto, a sentence taken out of a propaganda speech of a leading Nazi. It says, "The only person in Germany who still leads a private life is the person who sleeps." This statement does not prove true by the end of the book. Nothing about the realm of sleep is private. On the contrary, the dreamers in Berat's book, none of whom was a member of the Nazi Party, practiced in their dreams how to live in a totalitarian state. They learned how to accept total control over their lives, their minds, and souls. Some of the dreams Berat recounts have this uncanny prophetic quality we have already encountered in the last dream. The dreamers envision what the Nazis will soon establish in order to control their people. The dreamers come up with the most powerful images of life under totalitarian terror. In one dream, a man stretches out on a couch in the living room. It's evening, and he's reading a book. All of a sudden, he realizes that the walls of his living room, that the walls of his apartment have disappeared. A loudspeaker booms. According to the degree of the 19th of this month on the abolition of walls, he looks around, and not just his apartment has lost its wall. As far as he can see, all the walls have disappeared. Living rooms and bedrooms, kitchens and bathrooms, everything is exposed to everyone. It would be difficult to come up with a more powerful image of what it means to live under the conditions of totalitarianism. A woman, a teacher of mathematics at a high school, saw only symbols and geometrical images in her dreams. Why? Because it is forbidden to dream, so she said. If you move east to Russia under Stalin, we find exactly the same self-censorship. Many people decided not to write down their dreams in diaries or letters. It was too dangerous. The great Russian poet Anna Akhmatova remarked that in the Soviet Union, dreams should count as historical documents. She told her dreams to friends and asked them not to forget what they had heard. Thus, at least some of Akhmatova's dreams have survived, together with her poems, which were also handed down to us by people who learned them by heart. They had to wait for Stalin to die before they could be written down. In the late 1990s, Russian historians discovered a diary written by Andrei Asikovsky, a Russian peasant. A rare document. Not many peasants keep a diary. It is filled with dreams. Let me quote only one, written on December 18th, 1936. You may call it nonsense, but still, dreams too are facts. I want to write down an interesting dream I had. Someone had told me I could see Stalin, a historical figure. It would be interesting to get to see him. And so I went. A small room, simple and ordinary. Stalin is drunk as a skunk, as they say. There are only men in the room, and just two of us peasants, me and another guy with a black beard. Without a word, Josif Vissarionovich, that is Stalin, knocks the guy with the black beard down, covers him with a sheet, and rapes him brutally. I am next, I think, in despair, and I'm thinking, how can I escape? But after the session, Stalin seems to come to his senses somewhat, and he starts a conversation with me. Why are you so eager to see me personally? Well, why wouldn't I? Portraits are just portraits, but a living man, and a great one at that, is something else altogether, said I. I did not make it up. I'm recording facts. Now, these are delirious facts. Like Anna Akhmatova, like many, many others, Andrei Asilovsky insists that there is something real about dreams. Reality was impossible to describe, Akhmatova said after the Second World War and after Stalin's death. Living in those years was so absurd, so horrible, that only dreams could document what happened. And indeed, Arzilovsky's dream tells us a lot about the political system that we, in retrospect, call Stalinism. We see a small room filled with people, a rather claustrophobic scene. There are only men in the room, the dreamer remarks. Totalitarian regimes almost never allow women access to power. And only 2 men are peasants. Again, a sharp remark. While the Communist Party in the Soviet Union tried to integrate working class people, peasants were excluded. A couple of years before our dreamer had this nightmarish nightly encounter, about 500,000 peasants had lost their farms. Most of them ended up in Siberian labor camps. Collectivization, so the slogan, resulted in a total collapse of Soviet agriculture. About 6 million Russians starved to death. Stalin had literally raped his people. Let me read passages to you of a most unusual book, and that will be the last dream I will refer to. It is Primo Levi's memoir, If This Is a Man, published in 1947. Levi, an Italian chemist, was a member of the resistance in his country. He fought Mussolini and Hitler. In 1944, he was 25 at the time, he was arrested in his hometown Torino in Italy and then deported to Auschwitz. No one recognized him when he returned in the summer of 1945. Like many other survivors of concentration camps, he was convinced that sleeping under these conditions, that dreaming under these conditions, was a collective experience that all the inmates shared. Nothing individual about their dreams. And, as he also remarked, they all dreamt the same dream over and over again. The nights were structured by repetitions from the very first day on. And now I will read from this absolutely wonderful book to you. I'm so tired that I soon fall asleep, and I seem to be sleeping on the tracks of a railroad. The train is about to arrive. One can hear the engine panting. It is my neighbor. It is puffing. It is even nearer. It is on the point of running over me, but instead it never arrives. My sleep is very light. It is a veil. If I want, I can tear it up. I will do it. I want to tear it so that I can get off the railway track. Now I have done it, and now I'm awake, but not really awake, only a little more, one step higher on the ladder between the unconscious and the conscious. I have my eyes closed, and I do not want to open them lest my sleep escapes me, but I can register noises. I'm sure this distant whistle is real. It does not come from an engine in a dream. It can be heard objectively. It is the whistle of the small track. It comes from the yard where they work at night as well. A long, firm note, then another one, semitone lower, then again the first, but short and cut off. This whistle is an important thing and in some ways essential. We have heard it so often associated with the suffering of the work and the camp that it has become a symbol and immediately evokes its images like certain music or smells. This is my sister here, with some unidentifiable friend and many other people. They are all listening to me, and it is this very story that I'm telling. The whistle of the 3 notes, the heartbeat, my neighbor whom I would like to move, but whom I'm afraid to wake as he is stronger than me. I also speak diffusely of hunger and of the lice control and of the capo who hit me on the nose and sent me to wash myself as I was bleeding. It is an intense pleasure, physical, inexpressible, to be at home, among friendly people, and to have so many things to recount. But I cannot help noticing that my listeners do not follow me. In fact, they are completely indifferent. They speak confusedly of other things among themselves as if I was not there. My sister looks at me, gets up, and goes away without a word. A desolating grief is now born in me, like certain barely remembered pains of one's early infancy. It is pain in its poor state, not tempered by the sense of reality and the intuition of extraneous circumstances, a pain like that which makes children cry. And it's better for me to swim once again up to the surface, but this time I deliberately open my eyes to have a guarantee in front of me of being effectively awake. My dream stands in front of me, still warm, and also awake. I'm still full of its anguish. And then I remember that it's not a haphazard dream, but that I have dreamed it not once but many times since I arrived here, with hardly any variations of environment or detail. I'm not quite awake, and I remember that I have recounted it to Alberto, his friend, and that he confided to me, to my amazement, that it is also his dream, and the dream of many others, perhaps of everyone. Why does that happen? Why is the pain of every day translated so constantly into our dreams, in ever-repeated scene of the unlistened-to story? While I meditate on this, I try to profit from the interval of wakefulness to shake off the painful remnants of the preceding sleep, so as not to compromise the quality of the next dream. I crouch in the dark, I look around, and I listen. One can hear the sleepers breathing and snoring. Some groan and speak. Many lick their lips and move their jaws. They are dreaming of eating. This is also a collective dream. It is a pitiless dream, which the creator of the Tantalus myth must have known. You not only see the food, you feel it in your hands, distinct and concrete. You are aware of its rich and striking smell. Someone in the dream even holds it up to your lips, but every time a different circumstance intervenes to prevent the consummation of the act. The dream dissolves and breaks up into its element, but it reforms itself immediately after and begins again, similar and so forth, and without pause for all of us every night and for the whole of our sleep. So, Primo Levi's dream. There is no awakening from life in a concentration camp, no way of returning home. Once people had to live through a nightmare, their dreams display the pleasures of everyday life, a life they cannot share. We, the others, are not able to listen. Like the sister in the dream who looks at the dreamer and leaves without a word. Each epoch dreams of the one to follow. A sentence written in the middle of the 19th century by the French historian Jules Michelet. The 20th century bequeathed us with the heavy burdens. It has left us no answer to the question of how we might awaken from these bad dreams. The century ended with an empire collapsing, the Soviet Union, without war or without a revolution. And now in this year, 2011, early in a new century, we are suddenly surrounded by revolutions, the wake-up calls of history, as Karl Marx would have it. The people in Egypt and Tunisia, in Yemen and Syria, in the nightmare of Libya, are rising up against the only order they have ever experienced. One wonders what their dreams might tell us about their future and about ours. Thank you.
Thank you so much. I've got so many questions, I don't know quite where to start. I think I'd like to begin by asking about the connection between, or in a sense, the scope of dreams. I'm thinking about these awful circumstances that you're describing, under totalitarian regimes, and then I start thinking, well, where did those totalitarian regimes come from? And I start thinking about dreams. The idea of a Reich,
Yeah.
that would extend, halfway around the world, or the idea of a more just society called, a communist society. These seem to me like dreams.
Yeah.
So I'm wondering if we haven't got, which then perhaps turned into nightmares, but I wonder in a sense, we've not got, as it were, a world in which there are sort of dreams fighting each other, or some dreams resisting the impacts of other dreams. And in other words, whether the whole idea of dream isn't needs to be sort of proliferated, and you can see levels of dream being enacted politically all the time.
Well,
is that a question?
I don't know. Well, people very often say that they dream of a better future. So this famous speech by Martin Luther King, I had a dream, of course. And well, people in the 20th century had a lot of dreams of better futures. And one possibility for many people was socialism, communism. And it was very difficult for people to wake up from this dream and to notice that what was happening in reality was not according to what they had dreamed of. And this is so interesting about this diary of this peasant. He was a communist, but in his dreams he learned that he had to say goodbye to this kind of a dream. And this why these dreams are so extremely interesting, because obviously for him it was the only possible way to really think it through. Because if you think it through in reality, it's extremely painful to say goodbye to dreams once you realize that they are turned into nightmares. And what's also so interesting about thinking about this dreams that came down to us, I suppose, what we have is a little, it's the tip of the iceberg, I suppose, because most of the things people scribble down, they would disappear sometime. But that people insisted that the dreams are more real than the real life, that they're documents, that they say something about history. And actually, if you look around and see what people want other people to know and to read, I just found a book that was written by a young man in Cambodia who had experienced the killing fields. He did the same. He wrote down his dreams. So. And you would find it all over this strange planet. People exposed to slavery do it. People exposed to all kinds of oppressions do it. And they make the statements that we know something in our dreams that we don't know once we are awake and talk about it.
Okay, I want to ask you a question which addresses you as a writer and as a literary person. I'm thinking about the relationship between dreams and literature, and I'm just think of Kafka's Metamorphosis. It sounds to me like a dream book.
It is. Yeah.
Coleridge's Diary of the Ancient Mariner. That seemed to me to have been a dream that he wrote down. Now, I don't think you're talking about dreams. I think you're talking about literary transcriptions of dreams, and I want to put it to you that, at least on one account of dreams, that I'm afraid I read Freud too, and I got the sense from him that the dreams are actually, they don't follow narrative order, they don't follow logic, they don't follow proper sequences of time and so on. But the accounts that you're giving do have a certain kind of coherence. So what I'm wondering is whether you are really talking about dreams, or whether you're talking about the result of the work of transforming dreams and nightmares into words, into language, which actually then does give relief, makes sense, and so on. But can you say something a bit more about the relationship between the actual dream, that you have when you're asleep, which might wake you up, and the literary or quasi-literary product that actually has a certain power and organization to it?
What's interesting about dreams, this is one of the experiences for which we do not need other people, like pain. We dream, there's no one there when we dream, even if there are so many people showing up in our dreams. But we have this need to communicate. it's not just that people write down their dreams. So people would shoot movies with dreams in it, or they would paint dreams. Especially in the 20th century, I'm just teaching an undergraduate class at Vanderbilt, and for the last meetings we were looking at paintings. They're amazing paintings where people painted their dreams. So what I want to say is, if you want to share the experience of a dream, you have to do something to it. You have to recount it, you have to paint it, you have to do something, or compose it. It's also in music. So there are a whole bunch of compositions are called dream or nightmare or whatever. So you need to do something to a dream, and of course in the moment when you form it, to give it a kind of a form, a shape, it changes. And Sigmund Freud, he was dealing with the problem, you have to write it down and you have to give it an order. And as you said, usually dreams, they go against the order of a nice told story. People change their identity in the middle of the dream, or we have these weird spaces and they're not three-dimensional, not fourth-dimensional, they're just weird. So you open the door and you're in a different world. And of course it is also very interesting to play with this idea how you could do something with these dreams. I concentrated for the lecture today, I just concentrated on written down dreams. But it would also be very interesting, for example, to look at the history of the movie in the 20th century. It's filled with dreams. For example, what I also watched with the students, you might know the work of Akira Kurosawa, the Japanese director. He produced an amazing movie, and it's just called Dreams. And there's one dream in the movie, and it's after an atomic bomb hit Japan. So it's kind of uncanny if you watch this dream nowadays. So, you know, we have all this different representation of dreams, but I'm afraid we only can talk about dreams if we choose one of these representations. Otherwise, we don't know about it.
Just thinking about talking about dreams, one last question, then we'll open the discussion to the floor. When Martin Luther King said, "I have a dream," this was a very powerful speech, full of brilliant rhetoric and so on. Now, did he have a dream? No. What I'm asking is, did he have to have dreamt anything? Did he have to actually gone to sleep, or is it a dream if you sort of imagine something while you're perfectly awake and you sort of think, the world could be different? Does that count, or can that count as a dream for you, even if you didn't experience it when you were asleep? In other words, can the literary sense or the rhetorical sense of dream, is that a proper sense in your estimation?
I would take it extremely seriously. And it's, as I said, it's a kind of a common image for political rhetoric.
Right.
Like, revolutions are always connected to waking up.
That's true. Mm-hmm.
This is the metaphor that goes with revolution. It's a wake-up call. And I think we all listen to people speaking in the streets of Egypt. That's exactly what I said. Finally, we woke up. Now we are doing something. So it's the end of the nightmare. Let's do it.
Okay, we're going to have questions from the floor. This lady down here.
Okay.
The mic, please.
Oh, I've had family members in various concentration camps, and some who survived and some who didn't. And it seems to me the dream about the train and being on the track is this constant fear that somebody is going to come and take you to the gas chamber. I mean, you live with that every day while you're there. And it seems to me not surprising that a whole lot of people had the same dreams. It was part of everybody's existence.
Thank you.
Yeah.
So, lady back there.
Have you ever analyzed or tried to make sense of the child's book, Alice in Wonderland?
Yeah. Yeah, I think it's a dream. It works exactly like, the change of identity, the kind of uncertain spaces that you're moving through. I think it's a beautifully crafted dream. And I think Lewis Carroll even talked about that he first had this dream that this idea of writing this book came to him in a dream, and then he wrote the book. Actually, this is another way we could think about dreams. Very people made the remark that the most productive ideas came to them in their dreams. So, it's very different people, painters, people who write books, but also people who are in the sciences. Very often they would say, well, and then all of a sudden there was this dream, and oops, then I knew how to go about this problem. So it's also a very productive way of, I would say, thinking.
Yes, gentlemen, you. Is it mic, please?
Something you said about King's dream made me think of a conversation I had with a friend of mine about visions. You're talking about Paul's vision about the road to Bethlehem, and I mentioned about my dream or my vision for America. Now, the question that you brought up in my mind is, where do we draw the line between a dream as such or the dream we have?
It's a difficult question.
It is. I'm
is.
asking for help.
As I said, I would take it seriously if people call it a dream. It might be, even if it might also only be a kind of a rhetorical kind of a gesture, I would take it seriously because it's the way to imagine or envision something that's not there yet. So it might also have to do with hope. So without hope, you can't come up with a vision. Without the idea how we could live together better on this planet. So
I mean, the idea then is that to imagine a pretty dramatic change in the way things are, and certainly to be willing to do something to try and get there, you have to believe that there is another possibility.
yes.
And a dream can be a way of imagining the wholeness of this other possibility.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yes, there's a lady at the front here.
I don't know if I need a mic, but
You don't, but we do.
yeah, I'm sure. I spent many years of my career in advertising, and I would be given the task of coming up with a new campaign and new, slogan, whatever. And they would say, when do you think you can have it? And, there'd be a deadline and everything. And I always would have to say, well, I don't know, I'll have to sleep on it for a while.
Of course.
And I would,
Yeah.
and then, 2 days might go by, a week, or a few, one day.
Yeah.
But sooner or later, and I used to keep a little thing by my bed. I
Yeah.
would wake up in the middle of the night with this brilliant idea and write it
Yeah.
down. And if I didn't, it'd be gone.
Yeah.
And then I looked at the brilliant idea in the
Yeah.
morning, and it was sort of there and sort of not there.
Yeah.
But I always wondered if you could influence that. I mean, what I was putting into it was the facts I was getting at our creative meetings.
Yeah.
And then I'm sleeping and things are happening. So can you control those things? I mean, if you're trying to write a song or you're trying to write a book, can you use that, whatever's going on inside your skull, to actually create something that you're working on?
There's a very famous letter written by a German author of the 18th century. He writes to a young friend, and he says, there's a door between the conscious and the unconscious. He used a different terminology, but it doesn't matter. There's a door, and usually when we wake up, we close the door. And we have to learn to keep the door open, so that the ideas that we come up at night, that they can go through the door to our kind of conscious mind. And he says, we are not productive enough because we do not really learn how to keep this door a little open, to let these ideas come through. So a lot of people who think about dreams, they make the point that dreams it's a way of thinking. It's a different way of thinking than we usually do think. So it follows different rules. But it seems to be extremely productive for whatever we do if there is a kind of a, yeah, let's call it a bridge or however you want to call it, between these two states of our mind. And if you could control it, people work on that. They try to do it. But you know, if you use the word control, I prefer the idea of opening this door.
Or manipulating.
Yeah.
I had one comment to this advertising lady here, that I once read a wonderful book by a guy called J.W. Dunn, and he recounts going to sleep one night and having a dream in which, and it woke him up, he discovered the secret of the universe.
Yeah.
And he wrote it down, oh my goodness.
Yeah.
And then he went back to sleep, and then he woke up in the morning and looked at what he'd written down. And this is obviously a momentous moment.
Yeah.
And it said, the smell of vinegar pervades everywhere.
Yeah. Yeah, the gentleman over there.
Difficulty understand the differentiating between what you mean by a dream. If you're talking about something that your impression of a subconscious experience, or your conscious formulation of an unconscious thought, as opposed to a literary device. Primo Levi is basically using that. It's an allegorical thing to express his acceptance of what he had to endure. I mean, it's a device, a literary device, and I'm having trouble understanding how you differentiate between a literary device and what we call a dream, or recording a dream, as to an accurate representation or recordation of something that happens subconsciously.
Well, the problem is there any accurate documentation? Because, you know, the moment you wake up, you have to work, and you have to work with your memory. And usually what comes up when people are trained to write down their dreams, they just scribble words. Or some people draw. They are dream diaries, they are drawings. Because what's also important about dreams, and Freud was the first one to really make the point, dreams are about images and words, not just words. It's also about images. Very often the images are even more powerful than the words we have. And so whatever we know about a dream is because someone does something with a dream. It's always a translation, if you want to use this word, or a representation. Because the dream, the way we dream it, we don't know.
But it could be very much the interpreter of that is using all of the biases and all of the tools, their intelligence.
Yeah.
So it is very much a product of their...
It is.
It's probably still subconscious, but not from that subconscious dream experience.
Well, but we never know what the relation might be. And let me very briefly say something about the subconscious. We have two words, unconscious and subconscious, and I would prefer the unconscious, because the subconscious is just kind of a hierarchy. And so, in most people who thought about dreams, they tried to look at it like that. It's just two different modes of being, of thinking, of experiencing something, but we don't have direct access to it. Otherwise, the word awakening wouldn't make any sense. There seemed to be a difference. And as we know from modern sciences, we know that we even have three ways of being. We have sleeping, we have dreaming, and we have being awake. And I'm very much interested in the thresholds between these different modes of being. You could make the point and say, waking up doesn't make any difference. You could make this point, but I would say it does make a difference. And so it's a kind of, it's going back, walking around in your memory, trying to rearrange your memories, your recollection, when you think about your dreams.
Well, I suspect that both the conscious or the unconscious, they influence each other.
Yes, yeah. And we still don't know so much about the way, how they do it. And you know, looking at what the people in science are doing at the moment, studying dreams and sleep, they come up with the idea dreams don't have any meaning. They wake up people in the middle of the dream and ask them, now what did you just, what's happening? And they come up with this idea, it doesn't have any meaning. It's just a kind of, a very strange kind of a training that goes on while we are asleep. I don't think that's correct. I think this seems to, I would rather call it an experience, a really important experience. Yeah. And what we know is that people who can't dream, they really get problems. So it seems to be necessary for us.
Yes, this lady here. There's a mic coming.
You touched on the idea that many great discoveries have come as a result of some prodding in a dream. My question is there any record of people going to sleep and saying, I will now solve a problem?
No, I don't think so. And I'm afraid it doesn't work like that. It might have to do with waiting. Because, well, some people try to train themselves to dream in a certain way, but it only seems to work to a certain extent. And this is, actually that's what I like about dreams. This is not in our control. It's not in our hand. But something is happening.
In half of our lives.
Yeah, you spend a lot of time sleeping and dreaming. Yeah.
One last question? Yes, sir.
Well, I just wonder if you've thought about, could it be that many of these written dreams really have nothing to do with dreams? That they really are just a way for people to write things that may not be socially or politically acceptable, so you call it a dream, and then you can write it down and say anything you want.
Well, yeah, we don't know. But again, if you think back to this dream from the diary written down by this peasant in the Soviet Union, it's interesting what he wrote. He insists on calling it facts, which is a weird way of dealing with dreams. So he seems to think that if you write down dreams, in this situation, you are writing down, actually you're writing history. And a lot of people made the point in the 20th century that the written dreams are part of our history. It's not just making something up. And then, as you heard in my lecture, a lot of people thought that we know other things when we are dreaming. And it takes a while for us to bring them into our usual, normal, way of thinking and talking. And so it's an attempt of keeping a record for exposures to things we don't know yet what we make of them. And so I think it was a brilliant idea for this young journalist when Hitler came to power, just to ask everyone about their dreams. This was brilliant. And what she found out is, well, it's a kind of a theory of totalitarianism in dreams. This, whenever I read this one with the disappearing walls, this is so smart. You know, it took people, about 20 years to come up with a good theory of what happened. But these dreams are really, they are kind of diagnostic. They find extremely powerful images for totally new experiences. And okay, if it's a real dream or not, we don't know. But people told these things, and they wanted it to be written down and handed down to the next generations.
Okay, one last question.
There are some people who say they never dream.
Yeah.
What comment might you make about people who never dream?
Can we actually see if there's anybody here who
All right, I said
never dreams?
I said there are some people
Yes.
who
No, he's finding out.
No, I just want to know if we have anyone in the audience who has never dreamt.
Oh, yes,
No, I'm asking.
I know some people, I mean, who have said that they never dream.
The problem is, nowadays we can measure dreams to a certain extent, because what we know is, especially in REM dream phase with this rapid eye movement, this is obviously always a sign that we do dream, but we also seem to dream in the non-REM part of the sleep. So it's if people do not dream, they have there's one disease and people don't, and it's extremely dangerous because they go crazy. So, but what I want to say is, I have to be a little more clear here. What I want to say is, even if we do not remember, we obviously do dream, and it seems to be a big part of our sleep, and it goes in cycles. That's why we remember the dreams the best that we have shortly before we wake up. But we also seem to have different dreams in different parts of the night. And Freud, in this amazing book, The Interpretation of Dreams, he even made the point and said, in one night, we just deal with one question. So we would kind of work through one problem all night long, if we remember it or not.
I think it's time we thanked our speaker and
Thank you.